When I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag.
Alright. Welcome everybody. My name is Ultimate Iftikhar. I am the president of IAppreciate.org, a non-profit organization that was established to help raise money and awareness for victims of domestic violence. I'm here with my man who needs absolutely no introduction, Mr. Kanan, one of the up-and-coming, not even up-and-coming, but one of the rising stars in the hip-hop game today. And we're just chilling in Chicago, my hometown. You know, he's about to perform in a little bit, like what, half an hour?
Yeah.
Half an hour. And he was gracious enough to let me interview him for the organization, so hopefully we'll get right into it. For those people who aren't familiar with you, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself, where you come from?
Somalia, born and raised in Mogadishu, and made music that's in reflection of the experiences of that country, both good and bad. And you know, eventually, I think that's why we're here, because of that music. Yeah, that's it.
Somalia is a long way from here, man. So, growing up in Somalia, you spent most of your life in Somalia?
Well, yeah, I spent half of my life there.
So you were born there?
Born and raised.
Born and raised. So growing up there, you know, you yourself, were you ever like a direct, not victim, but you can say connected to domestic violence, or maybe you had friends growing up that were in households where domestic violence was present?
Well, the truth is that I was very fortunate to have a real an environment where we had such profound respect for the women around us. I mean, I think part of the reason why my music is the way it is today is that I had prominent and very strong women figures in my life. My mother was one of those. My auntie is, you know, one of the most powerful women to ever come from my country. So that's. But the interesting thing is that although domestic violence exists everywhere, unfortunately, Somalia is a pretty interesting place for that stuff, to talk about that stuff, because in fact domestic violence in Somalia is post-war.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot more new to us than because
why do you think that is? Why do you think it started post-war?
I think it's a lot to do with men who otherwise felt like they had a position, who otherwise felt like they had something, some dream, some hope, and when you lose that entirely, unfortunately, you begin to focus all your negative energy in the ones closest to you, and you begin to become destructive in your life and the lives of those who love you and who are around you. But in the olden days, we have stories, you know, that from the olden days, that Somalia is an oral society, oral tradition, and so we learn through the language passed down. And you have stories from a woman named Arawela. You have one of the most famous statues in the center of Mogadishu is a statue of this woman who is a warrior woman, and she has a sword and she's on a horse. And so all of our stories never really put women in a compromising position where it was men who are able to dominate or something like that. It was in fact you know, queendom and this and that. So this is what we know. I think that largely contributed to the generation that I was a young one in that we had pretty good homes, and,
right.
And there wasn't a lot of that stuff. It was very much frowned upon in society. But post-war, the story is different.
The story is different. That's unfortunate to hear. You know, you mentioned your music, and you know, people who are familiar with your music, they, you know, myself, I mean, first time I heard it, it was kind of like, you know, like you're walking around and you haven't drank in like a few days and your mouth's all dry and you got that first sip of water. Because it was real, like, it was, for me, it was because, you know, your type of hip-hop is real uplifting. And, you know, if you turn the radio on nowadays, a lot of the hip-hop is, you know, I call it bling hop. It doesn't talk about, you know, back in the old day, like, you know, Run DMC, you listen to these old groups and they used to talk about a message. But nowadays, especially if you look at the women in the music, they seem to be degraded. I want to know what your thoughts about that is, and if you could envision hip-hop music that was actually respectful towards women being mainstream.
Well, let me answer your first question. I mean, it's there is a lot of that in music, and it's just there is individual taste, and how you see the world, and so I don't have that in my music. I don't have it in me, so I can't be a reflection of what I am not.
But like, just to counter that, a lot of these rappers, they say, when we rap about, calling a girl this name or, putting her down, we don't really mean that. It's just an art form. But what kind of art form is this showing, like, the young generation?
Well, there's, it's like, it's interesting that people would say that. I mean, in fact, it's quite true that a lot of these guys, when you meet them, they're pretty intelligent.
Oh, they are. No, they are.
And they in fact, they don't live like that in their real lives. Some of them do, but a lot of them are cool.